What's up? What's up? We got one viewer on here so far. Good morning, fellas. Just jumping on a little early. If you're joining, you can shout out in the chat. Oh, look at you guys showing up right on time. Ben, what's up, bro? Ben, you never miss one of these. You're a boss, dude. You're like on it. I mean, it does not matter. You are there on time. Dave Drum. Dave, good news. All the chats pop up right at the bottom of my screen, so that's good news. So yeah, we're jumping on Coffee with Cory this Saturday morning. Oh, who we got? Oh, Chris French. What's up, Chris? Brian from Scotland all the way. It's got to be Brian. What time is it in the afternoon there? Is it like 3? Is it 3 o'clock in the afternoon over in Scotland? Hope you guys are doing well. I know this is Coffee with Cory. Maybe you were expecting me to be sitting on my lanai. But we got a little family trip planned. We're going to go hang out outside. So we got to pick some stuff up. So we're driving. So you're going to get, this is like combo Coffee with Cory. You actually do have a beverage here, but also drive time. But we got some great questions in. For those of you who are just jumping on, 2 p.m. Okay, so you're plus 5 hours. Well, good afternoon to you, Brian. So yeah, so we're Lloyd. What's up, Lloyd? You guys, I don't know if you guys already got breakfast. If you've already eaten breakfast and you ate something noteworthy, really, if you had bacon or something you made yourself, like let us know how you started. You are both well. Awesome. Let us know what you started your day with. We'll wait just another couple minutes for a couple guys to jump on, and then we'll get wrapping. In case you missed it, this is a Q&R. Little note about me. I personally love. What's up, Paul? I personally love Q&R. I love just answering questions. I love conversation. In fact, even as just kind of a content creator and communicator, I actually feel that I feel like sometimes some of the best stuff that's in me comes out during a Q&R time. So, what's up, Joshua T? It's good to see you. So I'm really pumped about Chick-fil-A for men's breakfast, Chick-fil-A minis for breakfast. Well done, Mark. What's up, Mark? How you doing, bro?
Yes.
Yeah, stay to the right. We're picking up stuff for Madison's class. So yeah, so excited to be on here with you guys, especially in a time when I feel like I've been preparing more and more online content. We're picking up an outfit for Madison right now. That's what's happening. Art, what's up, bro? Hey, Pastor Dennis. When I'm creating online content, I love questions because sometimes there's questions that people have that you don't get to ask if you're listening to me talk about what I want to do. So, here's my thing is we asked for questions ahead of time. We got several good ones submitted, some really great questions I'm excited to kind of dig into. But we are also, if you are loving Madison's hat, yes.
You know what? Can you close my gas? Thank you so much. Thank you.
Picking up Madison's dress. Cindy Winkleback says she loves your hat, Madison. If you didn't get a chance to send a question or you have one, we may have some time to get in here. We got some questions, really great questions. We got questions about books to read, my heart as a pastor. We got questions about end times. We got questions about Star Wars. Some stuff I'm really excited about getting into. First, I want to just, I think we're about 5 after, so I'll shout out a couple of emails. First, or a couple of notes as far as Cape Men goes. Number one, we're starting to do a new thing. It's 2 weeks old. It's called Drive Time. We're releasing a video every Monday morning early. I believe it's about, I believe it's 6 or 7 a.m. It's going to be going live, drive time. It's going to be shared on the Cape Christian page as well. But Dave Drum, our men's director, has done a great job of grabbing, he's connected to a lot of great leaders in a lot of different arenas, not just Cape Christian men, not even just pastors or Christian leaders. And so, oh, hey, John, of course it is. So John Winkleback likes your hat. But anyway, that's coming every Wednesday or every Monday morning, and it's just really good content. They're going to be 6 to 12-minute videos, and Dave's already kind of run some of the lineup by me, and so that's something you can look forward to every Monday morning on the Cape Men Facebook, drive time. And again, I was really, really impressed by just the lineup that Dave put together. So, yeah, Dave put there in the chat, if you're in here, you can see that you can send questions to capemen@capechristian.com. Another thing is, as far as re-entry in phase 1 and phase 2, I sent an email to the whole church yesterday, kind of with an update. We don't know what larger gatherings are going to look like in the near future. And so as of right now, the Cape Men, we have a men's breakfast planned. We have another virtual men's breakfast planned for June 20th on Saturday, as we did, whether it's go get something local or make your own. The speaker is to be determined. Hey, Jim, good to have you. So we have that going. And then also our Cape Men team is really growing. Our ministry is growing. And so if you have a desire to be a part of the team to help us kind of grow, whether it's video, graphic design, content creation, there's some areas that we're really trying to build the team. Dave Drum kind of heads that up, but Matt Wykes and Eric Stratman are a part of that. Pastor Mac oversees that. Greg Johnson's been just a tremendous help get some things going. And so if you have some gifts or skills or a desire to just to be a part of that, there's definitely room on the team. We have Bob and Ed and the team of men's breakfast guys. So we have different guys helping out with different things. And so if you're like, man, the men's thing is something I want to be a part of, it's not necessarily a huge requirement as far as like a lot of regularity, but if you have some ideas or skills that you want to give to the ministry, you can connect with Dave. But if you're interested, shoot an email to our email address, which is capemen@capechristian.com. So yeah, so I'm going to dive into some of these questions. What's up, Andrew? It's good to see you, bro. And remember, if you have any questions, you can either email the questions right now to capemen@capechristian.com, or we may be able to throw them in the chat here at the end. We'll see kind of how many of these we get to. And by the way, if I want this to be as conversational as possible, even though it's virtual. So if I'm talking about something and you have a follow-up on that question, or go, hey, can you explain that a little bit more? Can we go a little bit deeper? Feel free to do so on the chat. So, there's really no particular order. Dave kind of sent me the list last night, this morning, so I can have them, because we can't be on here at the same time. Otherwise he'd have been kind of sitting by me and we'd have done an interview style, which I really like. I like just off the cuff. So I just glanced at them, and so I want to give you kind of the initial, as much of an initial raw answer as I possibly can. So first question we'll dive into today is the question, and again, these are just random questions for Cory, the pastor, was what one book other than the Bible has, what's up, Bob? What one book other than the Bible has probably influenced my life more than any other book? And that was one I had to think about. That's kind of a tough question because there's a lot of books that I love. I will be the second to tell you, or the first to tell you, my wife would corroborate this. I am notorious for reading parts of books or gleaning stuff and then be like, that was awesome, but not like finishing books. So I do finish some books, but there's a lot of books that I don't finish. And so it's only appropriate that my answer to this is actually a chapter of a book, but actually I thought about it for about 10 seconds, and then it really jumped out to me. When I was either an intern or my first year on staff with our leadership program back in Nebraska, I was maybe 23 years old. I had to teach a class for the leadership college students, and they were teaching out of the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from Stephen Covey. Or I don't even know if that was what the whole, actually I think it was just Ministry Pragmatics. And everybody, the rest of the staff was gone and like, hey, just teach this from the book. And so it happened to be the chapter. And so the book, again, I'll quote it, is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. It's a leadership book. It's not a Christian book, although it's got a lot of Christian principles in it. And I had to teach out of the chapter. I believe it's practice 5. I'm pretty sure it's 5. It's learning to listen with empathy, I think the premise of the book was seek to understand before being understood. And I'll never forget. It was a small classroom, kind of a lab setting. And I'll never forget because I'm 23, I'm teaching these 18 to 20 year olds. And the entire time I'm prepping and going through this chapter, it's absolutely rocking my world because I realized that even though I public speak and I like people, that I probably communicate on the lowest level. He talked about the way that we listen, the way that we respond to each other. He talked about the way that we understand people. And he talked about just everybody wants to feel known and feel understood, and how everybody's desire is to feel understood. And he gave it a clinical, I think kind of a clinical reference. He called it emotional oxygen. He talked about being understood as emotional oxygen, and it was just very eye-opening. And my family is amazing. We are a ton of fun. But as I was going through that book, I was just kind of contemplating how I grew up, and we really kind of communicated on the lowest level. We were loud. We didn't listen well. We interrupted. And what he really talks about is there's different levels of listening. One is I think not really listening at all. The second one level is like listening with the intent to respond, which that was me my whole life. Is as soon as you said something that triggered something in me, I would feel it so strongly, and I couldn't wait till you took a breath so I could jump in or I could say my part. And then he talked about the difference between sympathy and empathy, which was really good. And just candidly, I knew listening was never a strength, but I don't think I realized to the depths and how much. And so, again, that was about 17 years ago. And there's probably no skill that have worked harder on and have had to work harder on than listening with empathy. I'm not naturally an empathetic person or empathic person. Both versions of that word are correct, by the way. But it has been quite the journey, and I really want, and it helped that at the time I had a mentor who was just great at it. When you sat with him, when you shared with him, when you connected with him, man, you felt like he understood you, he got you. And not only that, but I also struggled at kind of up to that point in my life that my life didn't relate to a lot of people. I was wrestling with my testimony, and Covey made this really great point. He said, people don't care if you can relate to them. They just want you to feel like you understand them. And I felt like it gave me the permission to connect with a whole different group of people than the ones that I had stuff in common with. So, and so that book, that chapter of that book, again, I have some favorites. I have some books that I've really enjoyed, but I continue to go back to that. I have to work so hard at it. It's just in me. I'm an interrupter. And I have to continually self-talk, listen. Well, again, because whether it's as a pastor or whether it's just as a leader or just a husband or a dad or even a friend, I want to be a good listener. And typically, this isn't always true, but typically extroverts are not known as great listeners, and so I want to be somebody who, if I am high energy, if I am extroverted, I want to be a really good listener, and I want to be somebody who's like, man, he's got a lot of energy, he's a lot of fun, but actually when I'm with him, like in a one-on-one setting, I'm like, he really listens. Like, I feel like he really understands. And so, what's up, David? So that book, and honestly, I feel like probably any man would benefit from reading that to help understand how your kids and wife and friends want to connect with you. So, while there's been a lot of books that have had impact, that one's, it's rocked my world 16, 17 years ago, and I still work really, really hard at it. Dave, you're going to have to help me out with some of these questions because my wife and daughter are going for a walk on the other phone that had all the emails, but I remember some of them. Do you want this? Do you want this? I'm going to go catch up with them in a minute. So that's, so that would be the book that I would say really, if there's one book. Now I'll throw out a couple of other favorites. You've heard me teach from this several times. Who Is This Man? John Ortberg is amazing. Prodigal God, Timothy Keller, amazing. Any book that has put a deeper understanding or a new spin on a Bible story that I didn't fully understand, that also has helped me maybe see myself in the story, has been really, really good. So that's one question. What's the biggest burden on my heart for the church? Thank you. That was the one. Okay, cool. Yeah, Dave, perfect timing. Biggest burden on the heart for the church. I think that was the question that was asked. And again, that was a loaded question. I saw that last night before I went to bed, and I've kind of been thinking about it, but I will tell you that I'm gonna do that so you can see my face better. There's a couple of burdens that I have. Okay, great. There's a couple of burdens that I have for the church. Number one is, and I'm going to say these direct. I don't mean them to sound harsh, but they kind of go together. First of all, my burden for the church is I want everybody who calls Cape Christian, I want anybody who goes to church, I don't want them just to come to an event on the weekend, but my biggest burden is I really want to help people become fully committed followers of Jesus. And what I mean by that is not just people who are committed to going to church once a week or even small group, but people who genuinely figure out how to have their own personal, real relationship with God, where they talk to him and they understand that he talks to them, and they read the Bible for themselves and they pray, and that church and groups is like fuel for their relationship. It's not the relationship for them. So I think that's my burden is, how do we get and how do we help people really own their own personal relationship with Jesus? How do I get people to understand that if you would spend your own time praying and reading the Bible, it would transform your life, your relationship with God. And so then the other side of that goes with that is biblical literacy. I know that understanding the Bible can be hard, but it is the information age. So we've never had more tools and resources available to us to help understand. And so helping people to really know the Bible, understand the Bible, how to help them learn how to take it for themselves. What I never ever wanted to be, or I'm not interested in the least, is being the guy who seems like an expert and you come every weekend, listen to me or whatever, watch me online. What I want to do is I want to help lead people and into their own understanding of the word, where they fall in love with it like I have, where they hunger for it like I do, and then when you open it up. And I think sometimes, because it can seem like, where do we start? And it's so much, it can be a little bit of, well, I'm just not going to read it. Well, even if you're brand new starting out, God has the ability to speak to you and the words jump off the page. And so I think that's like my big burden is the last thing I'm interested in is putting together a show. I want to create a good environment where people can meet God, but I'm not interested in being the expert or just the guy who puts on the show. I want people to have their own personal relationship with God. It drives me, and it drives me. And I'm a discipleship guy at the core. I want to help people become fully committed followers of Jesus. So that's my biggest burden. Let's see. I'm going to go to the next one here. David, how do you handle disagreements with your coworkers, family, wife? Oh, great question. So this question cuts to kind of one of the core values of our family. Also one of the core values of our church, one of the core values of me as a leader. And this is paramount, for me. And this is what I call the secret sauce to a leadership organization and even a family. So conflict is something, basically we're talking about conflict. Here's, what's interesting is I actually mentioned that in my message that's going to be going live at 4 today. It's one of the 10, how we handle conflict is one of the 10 symptoms of emotional unhealth or spiritual immaturity. But conflict, nobody loves conflict, yet it's everywhere, right? We have disagreements. And so what I love is that the Bible really doesn't leave anything out. I mean, not everything's black and white, but Jesus knew that we were going to rub each other the wrong way. We were going to bum each other out. And so it's for that reason he kind of gave us this template. And I'm going to give you really simple, practical stuff, but it's what I call the Matthew 18 principle. In Matthew 18, he basically says, it's pretty much inevitable for you guys to like rub each other the wrong way, bum each other out, hurt each other. So when you do, not if you do, when you do, here's what you do. And then it's a 4-step practical. Again, it's been misused, misquoted, but he talks about if you have something against someone or you know they have something against you, get up and go make it right with them, just the two of you, and you have won your brother over. If we would make a habit of doing that right away, before things stir and fester and all that stuff and build, 90% of the time, our issues and some of our challenges would be resolved. So then it says if you can't figure it out, then you bring somebody in. You know, in leadership, you bring in a leader, a pastor, a small group leader. In a family, you bring in somebody else or whatever. And so for us, Matthew 18 is a verb. We need to have a Matthew 18. I teach this to my team all the time. Our staff is, who do you need to have a Matthew 18 with? And Matthew 18 infers that you're going to give the other person the benefit of the doubt, and you're going to use help me understand language, not you did language. If Rebecca does something to upset me, rather than be like, well, you really ticked me off when okay, cool. Like I'm using like hostile, volatile, like fight language, which I don't have to do that. I also can get the same type of response and go, hey, I know you love me. I know you're committed. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt, and then I'm going to use help me understand. Let me give you an example. So I know you're committed to me. I know you love me. I know you want what's best for me. But when you said this, it kind of sounded like you were upset or like you were frustrated, but you didn't come out and say it. I know that's not your heart. So can you help me understand more of what you meant? Because I'm kind of dealing with something inside, but I'm not saying it's you. I'm saying it's me. And when you come with this is a me problem, not a you problem. I have these conversations all the time, but I don't have to deal with the conflict most people deal with because I have these conversations all the time. So that's how we do it. And then with it, a big key to that, fellas, come on, is humility. We got to be okay with being wrong. We got to be okay with saying, I'm sorry. I have found that some of the most connecting moments I've had with my daughter, who's 9, is the times that I've gotten to look at her in the eyes and say, you know what, Dad was wrong. I shouldn't have said that, or I didn't understand what was going on and I overreacted, or I misunderstood. I'm really sorry. I'm still a work in progress. Do you forgive me? And if you will come in with a sense of humility, being willing to be wrong, take ownership, say my bad, say I'm sorry. Fellas, if you have kids, 2 of the most powerful words your kids will ever hear you say other than you love them is I'm sorry. And so that's how we handle disagreements. The way we also handle them is it's called, we say, speak the truth in love. I grew up thinking that peace was the most important thing. And I had a conversation at one point with a mentor. I was dealing with a conflict and he asked me, he goes, why did you just brush it away? I said, because peace is the most important thing. And he said, no, truth is the most important thing. And so that's a really great lesson because God wrecked me. Hey, Eric, in that I had sacrificed the truth for peace, and ultimately truth is what builds trust, and the only way you can have a true relationship is if there's truth. And so the truth is sometimes you're going to rub each other the wrong way, but if we could be mature, humble, like look at all the stuff Paul said about how to handle stuff, look at Jesus's template and go, hey, when this happened, there's something between us. And so rather than let it fester, rather than push it away, we kind of have a principle of really not letting the sun set on our anger, or kind of a 24-hour rule. Like, we got to get back to this in 24 hours because it will come back bigger another time. And so, so that's how I kind of handle, that's how we handle our stuff. And that's what we do as a family. It's what we do in a church. And by the way, most people don't do this. Most Christians don't do this. And when you don't, you have toxic family environments. You have toxic work environments. You have toxic church environments. Because think about what happens even in church. Somebody in your small group says something or bums you out or rubs you the wrong way or says something you don't really like. Rather than go to them and be like, hey, can you help me understand what you meant? Because I'm kind of wrestling with my heart and da-da-da. You go to somebody else in small group. Well, yeah, I was in group and this guy said this. And then we turn it into gossip so quickly. And I have zero tolerance for gossip. I have less tolerance for gossip than about any other sin on the planet. It destroys families. It destroys organizations. It destroys churches. And it is, and gossip is a symptom of wussy Christianity when you won't go to somebody and just deal with it. So now I understand that, not everybody's been trained in this. Not everybody's read the books, but if you would commit to doing this and have somebody lead you, this could be an absolute game changer. Dave, by the way, I'm ready for another question. This could be an absolute game changer in all of your relationships. It's the Matthew 18 principle. How do you deal with disagreements and conflict? It's again, and it kind of goes back to the book I referenced. Both sides need to feel heard. Again, I was just dealing with a conflict with a couple, and one person made an accusation, and my question was, rather than make an accusation, oh, thank you. And then I want to talk about end times after this, Dave. Rather than make an accusation, why not say, help me understand what you meant when you, if you could learn rather than, well, you are, or you did, or you, how can you learn rather than be accusatory to the other person because you're hurt and that hurt is real. You might be sad and that's real and you can't pretend it doesn't exist. Then you go, I need to have this conversation with you. And a lot of emotional health comes from our lack of ability to deal with conflict. I'm probably going to do maybe even a teaching or series on conflict, but I could talk about this for a long time because there's a lot of really, I just know people who've been Christians a long time, people who've ascended in the leadership ranks. But man, sorry, I got a call. The church notoriously handles conflict very, very poorly. So that's one I'm pretty passionate about. Dave says, the Bible says that all authority comes from God. It also tells us to submit our earthly leaders to the glory of God. What do we do when our leaders evil? This is a tough one. This is so you guys know me, context matters. Yes. Art, let's remember that. Mastermind on conflict. Yes. Sorry, I got a phone call twice and my brain just switched. So context matters. Context matters. And so I don't know who asked that question or the context, but there's no one simple black and white answer. And so I'm going to answer this generally and broadly and hope that I hit kind of the idea. But there's several things that I would ask when that, first of all, the Bible does say all authority is established by God. We also learn in Genesis at the very beginning that God gave us free will. And so while God may establish authority, it means he may put people into position. It doesn't mean that he endorses all of their decisions. But the Bible does say that how we respond to our authority, in essence, is a reflection of how we respond to our ability to trust God. And so here's a black and white simple answer, and it's not always as simple. When we get to heaven, we are going to have to give an account for how we honored and respected those in authority over us. Our authorities are going to have to give an account for how they treated us. So if we could just keep that in mind, I think for some of us, that would be really helpful. That what am I responsible for? I can still honor a position and I can respect a position even if I don't respect the person. When I learned this as a young man, it became very helpful. You respect the position even if you don't respect the person. And yeah, Dave's saying it. Look at David and Saul. Saul tried to kill David. David never did anything wrong. We're referencing the Bible. Yet David said, I won't even lay a finger on the Lord's anointed. And David, by the way, at that time had already been anointed as the next king, but his time hadn't come. And so I think for many of us, we could do a lot better at honoring and respecting our authorities. Now, when it says, what do we do when our leader is evil? That's a loaded question. Some people are just evil. But here would be where my question would be what do you mean by evil? Like they just have bad lifestyle habits? Well, if that's the case, I mean, Daniel was under Nebuchadnezzar, David was under Saul, Joseph was under Pharaoh, Paul had to answer to, Caesar and Pilate. I mean, pick one. You know what I mean? Now, so if it's evil, it's like, I just disagree with how they lead and yada, yada, yada. If every time we disagreed with the decision a leader made, whether it be a personal conviction or how they did something, we could just pull ourselves out from underneath them, we would have complete anarchy. And oh, by the way, Cory, the guy, thinks that's where America's on its way to. Because the minute one leader, one politician says one thing we disagree with, we just cast them aside and we realize we just believe we don't have to do anything. Well, again, it depends on what your worldview is. As a biblical worldview, Even these men in the Bible who were under terrible politicians, terrible leaders, found a way to establish the kingdom. And really, here's what I notice about Paul is he just didn't waste his time worrying about what Caesar was up to. He was like, Caesar's going to build his kingdom. I'm going to build God's kingdom. And so now I do say this, if you're under somebody who is literally asking or demanding you to do something that is against the Bible, that is against God's word, his instruction, that would compromise your morality or your character, then you have a Matthew 18. Look at how these all connect. Then you go, that's where I do think you draw a line. So if I'm under a leader that's evil and I just disagree with, and he's a bad person, he spends money poorly and he has prostitutes and whatever, but he's not asking me to follow that, then I have to go, God, I don't get this. This is hard for me, but you have put me under this person. And as somebody who's, I've worked for bosses and I've had other jobs, as somebody who hasn't always been under the greatest leaders, anytime you're under a leader who's hard to be under, God has always given you an opportunity to learn something from them and grow in that opportunity. And one of the questions that I've learned to ask myself is, if I try to remove myself from this situation, is there some growth that I'm running from that God is trying to instill in me? One of the greatest leadership teachings I ever heard was at a conference years ago by Denny Durant. He spoke to many NFL teams, chapels, all that. And he talked about the life of Joseph, and he talked about the 7 relationships. I've only heard it one time and it stuck with me. He talked about 7 relationships that everybody needs for their development. He went through the lifespan of Joseph, and he talked about a father who loves you or celebrates you, brothers who betray you, a Potiphar who prepares you, a cupbearer who, a temptress who proves you, a cupbearer who forgets you, a jailer to promote you, and a Pharaoh with a famine. And it was really, as you can imagine how good that was. But one of the things that I realized is if you look at the 7, I think it was, Joseph was sold into slavery when he was 17. If I'm just going by memory, I believe he was 30 when he was elevated with Pharaoh. So his 13-year, his adult development, if you think about who trained and prepared Joseph, he was prepared and trained by a Potiphar. He was prepared and trained by a jailer. He learned the ins and outs of Egypt. And so most of his leadership probably weren't the greatest guys. I mean, Potiphar, by nature of just that culture, would have had many, many women, would have had concubines and prostitutes. And I mean, Egypt was not known for like, oh, we're just farmers and we're just good to everyone. Although they did kind of save the world in that time in history. And so Joseph, had like all these leaders that he probably would never emulate their character, but he still gleaned what he could from them. And so again, I'm guessing there's some pretty mature guys on this based on who's on it. But one of the kind of the principles I've learned to live by is chew up the meat, spit out the bones. So you could be under a tyrant, but you still can learn something. I believe I can learn something from anybody. And so again, I think there's a posture of humility. One of the things that kind of bothers me about our culture is we've got hey Lloyd, Potiphar was like the governor of the day that Joseph was sold to serve. And so Potiphar, he ended up being Potiphar's number 2 guy. So he kind of was like the number 2 in the whole league. One of the things is that we've kind of lost a sense of humility in our culture. And so it's like we can only learn from the best or the experts. I believe I can glean something from anybody. Even if they're less experienced, less skilled, less spiritual. And so kind of for the last 15 years, 17, 20 years, I've just been stealing the best from everybody and trying to implement that in my life. And so again, what do you do when you're under an evil leader? You have to decide, is this evil? Like, I disagree with their life choices. Well, guess what? They're going to have to answer for God in that. And you're going to have to answer to God for how you submitted to them. If it's they're imposing their evil on you and exposing you to it, then you have a different conversation where you may have to make a tough decision where you go, if I have the free will to do it, I may need to get out from underneath this. But a lot of our spiritual heroes, whether they be biblical or even modern day, Martin Luther King Jr., pick one, we're under some pretty oppressive, evil leadership and still were able to further the gospel and build the kingdom. And so, I think you have to answer the question, is this directly affecting not my mood, but is it directly affecting the way that I'm having to live my life based on my behaviors and my lifestyle? If you're being forced to go to parties and be around prostitutes and that kind of stuff, that's one thing. If it's another thing where it's just like, your boss is a word we can't say publicly on this, join the club. So I don't mean to sound insensitive, but find a way to learn in that environment and go, God, help me to get everything I can help me to grow in whatever way I can until you switch my context. This next one I'm not going to talk a long time about, but I thought it was a great question, because I'm seeing a lot of stuff, especially now. Is COVID-19, do I believe, this is a total personal Cory, the guy, Pastor Cory, do I believe COVID-19 is the beginning of the end times? Oh man, there's so much I want to say about this. Here's what I think about the end times. We are closer now than we have ever been. We're closer now than we have ever been. Oh, isn't that so good? Come on, can we just have a moment? We're the closest to Jesus' return. For those of you who don't know what end times are, Jesus promised his return, and he's going to restore Israel, and he's going to restore Jerusalem, and he's going to take down the Antichrist and Satan and a new heaven and a new earth. And it's in Matthew 25, and it's in Daniel, and it's in Revelation. I'm going to share I've been on the earth 40 years, and I've done some studying. So I'm going to share you some of my experience and my studies. For 2,000 years, people have wrongly predicted the end times. I think it's so fascinating. I mean, wrongly predicted the end times. In fact, a little Bible history nugget for you. Anytime you see the word "in the last days" in the Bible, I don't know if you know this, but "in the last days" actually just refers to any time after Jesus ascended to heaven. Now, I believe it's in Matthew 25. It's, in the last days, the Bible says this: no one can know, not even Jesus knows the time that God's going to send him back. But it says we can know the season. What's up, Rhett? My dude. Nobody can know the time. But the Bible says, here's what to look for. It talks about earthquakes and famines and wars and rumors of war and all of these things. Follow the signs of things happening. I'm so glad you said that, Lloyd. Here's one thing I'm really passionate about, and I would love for this part to go viral. There's a little bit of American arrogance with our eschatology. Eschatology is your belief on end times. And what do I mean by American arrogance? We have a tendency, and I'm not judging anybody, so I'm sorry if that came off too strong. We have a tendency to see the end times through the lens of what is happening in America, the wealthiest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world. Things that we deem terrible, that could be the signs of end times, have actually been happening for thousands of years in third world country and in the Middle East. And because we see a post about something that happens in America, or even, terrible happened, but 9/11 and all this stuff, we only see it through an American lens, which I think is very, very myopic. The end times refer to all of the world. And let's not forget, for 4,000 years of human history, God's chosen people was Israel, and the city that's going to be reestablished is a new Jerusalem. So we should probably think about through a lens of Israel a little bit as well, which there's that part of it, because Israel became a nation in the 40s for the first time in over 2,000 years since the time of King Jehoiakim back in Daniel. A little bit of history there for you. But what's fascinating to me is that every time something goes wrong in America, we're like, end times. But every week, Christians are being persecuted and murdered in Palestine and beheaded, and people and children are starving, and there's typhoons in Japan, and there's earthquakes, and there's tsunamis, and there is, there have been unthinkable acts. Okay, Art, thank you. You just said it. I was going to say there have been unthinkable acts. Think about the Holocaust 80 years ago. That's probably one of the most horrible things. It is the most horrible thing that's ever happened to the Jews in modern history. Perhaps one of the most ever. How was that not 80 years ago going, it's got to be the end times? Now, I know the science. I've done the homework. I've heard the talks. I know that earthquakes are more rampant than before. And here's what Christians, us American Christians, man, we got to get out of our American mindset. I'm just telling you. Because we're watching the morality of America fall. And we're convinced, because we somehow subconsciously, most of us, if we would be so honest, we subconsciously have grown up with this idea that America is God's chosen nation. And as we lose our morality, God's got to come save us. when in fact the kingdom is being built all over the world in countries that are immoral, that are communist, that are oppressive, where there's slavery, and there's no morality. And I have friends that live in Africa, African friends. I have European friends. I have Central American friends. I mean, I have friends all over the world. And I've been to China 3 times. I mean, I've been a part of the underground church in China. I've been a part of the above ground church. I mean, and when I travel, it's comical because they all talk about, you Americans are so funny with your end time stuff. As soon as anything goes bad, you guys think it's the end times. And again, I would just challenge us. So it could be, it really could be. But I think that there's way more to it than, anything. And again, there's all kinds of jokes about it. And I know, the 666, I've seen a couple things about, the new $3 trillion Democratic stimulus that was passed last night. That's HR 6666, and people are losing their minds. Okay, let me help you. Again, we don't know what's going to happen with that. I know there's the chip in the arm, maybe 666, maybe. We got to get way more comfortable with not knowing, Christians. Like I just think we've hurt people and we've messed people up by being so matter of fact about, we know how it's going to go and it's got to look like this. And I'm convinced of 2 things. I'm convinced that Jesus is coming back, and I can't wait. And it says to get ready. It says to be ready in our hearts, and it says to tell other people. And so I've watched people lose their whole lives in end times and never lead anybody to Jesus. The whole thing about Christ's return is it's supposed to compel us to share the love of Jesus and bring other people with us to heaven. So there's that. And then the other comical part for me is just like, if we could just lay off the Antichrist for a little bit, that would be awesome. I mean, Hitler was the Antichrist. Obama was the Antichrist. I've heard Oprah was the Antichrist. Bin Laden was the Antichrist. I'm sure some people think Trump is the Antichrist. I mean, we've had lots of Antichrists in my lifetime, and I'm not even 40 yet. So, like, we just need to chill out. And at the end of the day, the end times is going to be the greatest event in the world. What do I mean? Jesus is coming back. Like, that should be the thing that is the number one thing that should excite us the most. It's other than the fact that he rose again and died on the cross for our sins and gave us a new life and a new identity. He's coming back. We win. He's going to come back. He's going to whoop the devil's tail. He's going to whoop the Antichrist's tail. He's going to establish a new heaven, a new earth, a new Jerusalem, which we don't exactly know what that means. So if you think you know, turn up the humility and give yourself permission to be wrong. And what we know is that we're going to reign with him forever in a perfect environment where he's going to wipe away every tear. No more sin, no more shame, no more guilt, no more division, no more backache from hard labor. I mean, so we should be like, let's go. That's how we should feel about it. But again, I dug into this. I spent some time digging into this, and we should be, here's the thing. We should be excited about Jesus' return, but we don't know near as much as we think we do, and we have to drop the American perspective. We have to. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than just what's happening in the United States of America. Again, every time I hear like, oh, the Antichrist, this thing happened in America, end times, I'm like, don't tell that to like Afghanistan or Christians in China or Christians in like oppressed African nations. So let's just remember there are other people in the world. Almost all of them suffer more than almost all of us every day. There are some countries that their best day is still worse than one of our worst days. So, but let's go back to the beginning of this. Jesus is coming back. That should super excite us. And we're on the winning side if you have Jesus. And that also should compel us to bring people with us. So I'll leave it at that. Dave, are we on Star Wars, or are there a couple more? Thanks, Rhett. Dude, it's good to see you. I miss your face, man. Okay, as you know, May the 4th is Star Wars Day. What day is Wookiee Life Day? I did not know this. I may or may not have looked it up or gotten some help. I did not know that there was a Wookiee Life Day. I happen to know now that it is November 17th, is Wookiee Life Day. I don't even know what that means, but I feel like I need to get up on it. I love Star Wars, but there's enough that I don't know about it. Now there was another Star Wars question, Dave, about Anakin's rival or something. I knew that one. Give me T1 up. There was another Star Wars question that I knew the answer to. It was something from, I think, episode 1. Oh yeah, it was who was Anakin's rival. Who was Anakin's rival in the pod races? Of course, that's Sebulba. So I got that one. Oh, Darth Vader's chess piece has some writing on it. What language is it in, and what does it translate to? Okay, so I know half the answer to this question. Well, I think I know. Which I think this is so cool. On Darth Vader's chess piece, which can we all agree Darth Vader's still like the most powerful character in all of Star Wars. His chess piece is, I believe it's ancient Hebrew, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know exactly what's on it, although it's something kind of like powerful, it just accentuates Darth Vader's dominance, like forgiveness, or like you can live if I say you live. I think it's something along those lines, where it's like you're, if you know it, Dave, or if Greg's on here, I'm sure he knows it. His deeds will not be forgiven until he marries. Yes, yeah, it's basically like Darth Vader's like, you're okay if I say you're okay. I knew it was something really awesome like that. Is Darth Vader the Antichrist? Yes, at one point, Darth Vader was the Antichrist. But like Oprah and Bin Laden and Obama and so many others, it turns out he probably is not. Great question. I got 9:45. Dave, I don't remember what other questions were on there. Ooh, what can we as men do to encourage you as our pastor? But apparently Traeger Day 2020. I will be smoking some ribs today, I believe, Rhett. Rubbing them, tearing the membrane off. Possibly some apple butter in that foil for the last 2.5 hours. So we should compare notes later, by the way. Lloyd, my birthday is Wookiee Life Day. Lloyd, your world just got better today by learning that. What can we as men do to encourage you as our pastor? Man, I love that question. That was honestly the hardest one to answer. I would say this. I would say a couple things. Number one, I am a words of affirmation guy. So, I mean, just encouragement. You know what really encourages me? A couple things. Knowing that men are still wanting to grow and be a man of God. So like when you share me like what God is like saying to you and how you're growing, that super encourages me. I'll tell you that one of the other things that encourages me is anytime that something that I preach or say from a whether it's in a one-on-one meeting or from a message, when you can be specific about, man, when you said this, it really resonated and I needed to hear this or that or whatever. Like that's super encouraging. But the biggest thing that would encourage me is seeing this group of guys really make a concerted effort to get other guys in the church involved in whether it's men's ministry or serving on a team or whatever. Yes, Josh Templeton says it's Hebrew for dude be kind. That's what we just need to say it is. I love it. We need to make those shirts, Josh, which I know you can make that happen. So I think those are things that you can do to encourage me. I'm encouraged when people are involved and growing. And so again, I didn't take this job this isn't about me. This isn't, so I can pat myself on the back or feel like some sort of, I don't know, preacher, celebrity or hero or whatever. I just want to help people. It goes back to the beginning question. I want people to have their own personal relationship with God. And it's super encouraging when I see you guys helping other men experience and discover that as well. So, Dave, what else you got for me? Connect, grow, serve. That's right. That's it. Like I said, I'm sorry I don't have my questions in front of me. I felt like there was one more. I forgot time for one more. And then I'm going to go hang out with the girls. They actually just came back. It looks like we're ready for part 2 of our walk. This has been so fun to hang out with you guys. Again, like I said, I love this stuff. I'm going to wait 1 second. If there's any other questions, I'll be done in about 5 minutes or less. How do you respond to criticism? Good one. That's a great question. First of all, I'll tell you this. I was fortunate enough to sit in a workshop when I was about 25, and it was I'll do this sometime with us. It was one of the best teachings I ever heard. I've tweaked it and made it my own. It's the price tag of leadership, and they went through 6 things that if you want to be a leader, you can anticipate is going to be a part of your life. And it was like discipline, rejection, loneliness, criticism. Like off the top of my head, there's 4 of them. And so what's up, Shane? So how do I respond to criticism? It helps that I probably already have a predisposition towards knowing that in my role, that criticism is a regular part of what I do. Whether it's criticizing me personally, criticizing one of my team members, or criticizing my church, the way we do things, criticizing the worship music, criticizing the service times, criticizing the song selection, criticizing it's too loud, criticizing it's not loud enough. I hear it every week. But I'm not like mad about it because it's people who care. It's people who have preferences. And so one of the ways I handle criticism, number one, is there's some self-talk and there's some things I've set up that help me understand. Some of it's constructive, Lloyd. Some of it's just mean. But I think probably 80% of my emotion attached to it is mostly mitigated because I just know it's part of the job. I have an expectation of criticism where I'm not like, well, oh my gosh, where did this come from? I can't believe this is happening. What in the world? But I'll tell you this, two things. Number one, I do think that I believe there's an aspect of humility in my leadership. And here's what I mean in that. I believe we always can do better, and I believe that we always can get better. And so there's something that I learned early on is that there's almost always a hint of truth in all criticism. And so again, it's called the chew up the meat and spit out the bones principle. And so anytime somebody comes with criticism, a couple of things I do is, number one, I don't put their face on the criticism. I never hold it personally. If who's on this? Art. If Art Van Zanten, Pastor Art, friend of ours, came to me and says, hey, I got some feedback or criticism, I'm never going to be like, well, gosh darn it, Art. Like, I just hate that guy. I never put Art's face on it. And then I try to, if it's really personal, I make sure that I let my emotions come down, or if I get emotional about it, and then I go, what could be true about what he's saying? You know what? That's really good input. You know what? We could do that, or we should think about that, or I hadn't thought that way. Rather than, one of the things I try never to do is I never respond immediately, and I try to never respond defensively. Another thing, how I always handle criticism, I always, and some of you, I'm going to give away one of my secrets, I always say the phrase, thank you for your input. I want to be an approachable person, and I want to be an approachable leader. So I want people to know that they feel and know that they have a voice in my life. Now, when I say thank you for your input, unfortunately, some people hear, I'm going to do what you just said. And that's not always what I'm saying. But what I am saying is you always have a voice here and your opinion matters. And so I want people to feel heard. I always thank them for their input. And then I always ask, is there anything from here I can glean? And if if it's a leadership thing or if it's an organizational thing, I'll bring it to the team and go, hey, is there anything here we can, is there truth to this? We've improved it. And then the other thing I always do, and I really do, is I take this to prayer. I go, okay, God, somebody said something about this. Is this something is this just input, or is this something you're wanting to do in us? And then there are sometimes it hits you in the heart, and you're like, man, this one really bothers me. And when that happens, that's when I start to pay attention. I try to be self-aware. I pray, and then I usually end up having a conversation with either a good pastor friend somewhere else or even a counselor, and going, hey, for some reason, they said this and it's really bothered me. I'm kind of caught off guard by why it bothers me. And somebody who can help me sort out my feelings, because I don't want, if I'm not careful, my heart will get hard. I will get bitter. I will become mean. I will become jaded. And it will come out in everything that I do. My wife, my kids, next time I hear criticism. And so we actually have what we call a culture of fearless feedback here at the church. And so we invite it. I invite it from my team. My communication team, Art, you kind of help us with this. You've attested to this. I let my team chop up my stuff. I let them, there's nothing they can't say about a message when I pre-preach it or whatever, or a content. They can say to me, that's a stupid idea. And so I feel like I lead with humility in that. And in doing so, it comes from the perspective of, it's not about me. If we start with, it's not about me. Come on, somebody. If it's not about me, then if my whole goal is to do what's best for the people I serve, then I shouldn't take it personal. If it's about me, that's when it gets personal. And so if somebody gives me any input, whether it's it's anything, I should be able to come back to myself and say, man, how could I take any bit of this and let it and implement it into whatever, my life or my leadership, so that the people I love or serve or I'm around can benefit from this. And so, thank you for saying that, Brian. That's really cool. Anyway, so I think that's it. So, Yeah, consider the other first person. And again, it kind of goes back to my first question about the book, about people feeling heard and understood. Yeah, and then I always try to be teachable. So, guys, it's been so great to hang with you. Dave, if you got any last second, any one last minute thing, I'm gonna reiterate a couple of the kind of pointers or announcements I pointed out on the front end. But I've loved hanging out with you guys. I love Q&R. I could do this forever. I love just sitting in a chair and responding. So, Dave, maybe when we get back sometime later this year, we can get this happening again. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with me on a Saturday morning. I'll say this. Here's a couple things. Yeah, guys, thanks for making Cape Men a priority. Few things. We're planning on, Lloyd Kelly says, how can I improve on the criticism that I got? Lloyd, let me say this. I haven't always been as good at it as I am now. And the reason how I got to where I am is I would sit with somebody that was either a brother or even a leader in my life that would help me sort through it. So I would say get with Dave or Mac or Art or one of these guys and go, hey, help me sort through this. So I'd say this, a couple things. We're planning on doing one more virtual men's breakfast on Saturday, June 20th. The speaker has not been announced, but we'll be doing that right here. Bring your breakfast, have a word. It'll be a great opportunity. It'll probably be our last virtual men's breakfast. So that's happening June 20th. Drive time is happening every Monday morning. Dave has some amazing leaders on here. It's just a 6 to 12 minute video just to get your mind in the right place for a week. That you can get that on this page every Monday morning. And then we're building our men's team. So if you want to be a part of this, if you have some skills, whether it's video editing, content creation, if you're interested in being more a part of this, we're continuing to grow our ministry and our team. And in fact, the last men's breakfast we had before kind of COVID hit, we had just over 200 men together. So we're really excited about what God's doing in the men here at Cape Christian. So if you are interested in being a part of that, Dave is our men's director, but you can get a hold of him at capechristian.com. And Dave has a great team, Greg and Eric and Matt and Ed and Bob. There's a bunch of guys that are already doing this. So Dave will put up the email address at the end here, but capemen@capechristian.com, how to get involved. I hope this has been encouraging, insightful. I've loved hanging out with you guys. And Brian says, I need to have somebody give some direction for the next small groups. Dave Drum can help you with that. So again, Dave Drum or Cape Men, the small groups, you can either sign up for one or you can just put them together. You can just get some guys together and discuss the book and the questions. It's that simple. But Dave can kind of answer your small group questions, all that kind of stuff. He's our guy. Have a fantastic weekend. Hey, let's endure criticism. Let's be teachable. Let's be great listeners with the intent to understand. I would totally encourage you to grab that book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, and just jump into even that chapter about listening. It's practice 5, listening with the intent to understand. Could change your marriage, could change your parenting, could change your leadership. May God bless you guys, keep you guys, and may you feel energized coming out this weekend. The message this weekend, I think, is going to be really, really good. I'm super excited about this Extreme Makeover series. Do not miss it, and please get in a group and do the work, not just listen to the message, but do the work, and I believe God's going to transform us. So I'll catch you guys until next time. God go with you.